All right, everybody. So we will go ahead and hop into it today. So thank you guys for joining. As always, it's always a pleasure to see some familiar faces and some new friends. So as you know, here at Royal Legal, the way we do these shows is we, like to put a heavy emphasis on the connection factor and using these as networking. Particularly, I think these investor persona specific ones, because you guys are all like-minded in the type of investments you're making at this time. So inside of that, what we're going to do, the format for today will be, we'll hop in here briefly for a few moments in just a moment and do breakout groups. Inside of those breakout groups, have a couple questions, thought joggers for you to talk about. We'll come back outside those breakout groups, and then we will talk briefly about some common themes that came out of that for everybody. And then we'll hop into the presentation. Now, today we're going to be talking about estate planning and what that looks like for you as a short-term investor. After that presentation, we are going to go straight into Q&A today. We're going to allow for a much longer Q&A portion at the end. So what I would recommend is, as you are going through your breakout group or through the presentation, any thoughts that are top of mind for you, things you want to know about estate planning, how to incorporate it, questions about your current estate plan, feel free to drop those in the chat or, hold on to them, keep them top of mind for here at the end when we get into the Q&A portion. So I want to remind everybody, these are being recorded, so just be aware of that. We are using these for a couple things. One, want to be able to share this with anyone that it could be impactful for, so we'll pass out the links at the end of the call. Also going to be using it as a resource for our webpage to tailor things to short-term investors. So that's another good way to be thinking about this Q&A portion. If you have questions that you had in the beginning when you were setting up your estate plan, or things you think that other short-term investors should be thinking about in this area, please feel free to ask them so we can make sure we get the best content for folks out there. So with that being said, really grateful to have all you guys. I think we'll go ahead and hop into the breakout groups now. So things that I want you to be thinking about while you're in these breakout groups, traditionally we had 7 questions, and those revolved around, who are you? Where are you from? What do you invest in? What's your superpower? What's some challenges you're experiencing? What are some wins you're experiencing? And then what's something you need from someone else? So is there a connection or an asset you're looking for that we could connect you with? So what we're going to do today is a little bit different. So feel free to pick 1 or 2 of those from those lists so we can get to know you inside of the breakout group. But I also want you guys to be talking a little bit about this idea of estate planning as well, to get you primed, to get your mindset for that presentation portion. So inside of that, the thought jogger I'd like to post today is, as a short-term investor, what part of the estate planning is most important to you, and have you had challenges in this setting that up? And so if you guys will kind of kick that around in your groups a little bit, inside of your breakout group, if you will appoint a spokesperson, because what will happen is when we come back from that group, I'll ask the spokesperson for each breakout group to spend about a minute or two just giving us any common themes that came out of it for you. So you won't have to completely recap what all your group members said, but I do want to use this as an opportunity to see the things that unify us as investors and these common themes we're coming up with. So highly recommend making sure you got your pen ready, take any notes as you go. I think we're going to have a more valuable session if we're keeping those items top of mind for us. So with that being said, thought joggers are going to be posted in the chat if you want to take notes of those now. So when you hop into it, let's go ahead and appoint that spokesperson, and then we'll use that 10 minutes to really connect and get to know each other a little better. So if you'll go ahead and put us in the breakout groups, that'd be great.
All right, one moment.
All right, everybody. So welcome back. Hopefully you guys got to maybe meet some new faces or connect with some other investors you've had the chance to connect with in these meetings before. But let's go ahead and hop into it. So if you were the spokesperson for your group, if you will use the reaction button down there at the bottom, we'll go ahead and talk about some common themes that came up for us.
Megan, I'm just gonna go right into it. I actually had Sean Lee. He's in San Francisco. He's new, and basically this is his first time. He's looking for help. He's interested about what we're doing here. He stumbled into Scott's information on the web. Let me see here. He's new in the short-term investing, and he's currently working right now. But he's looking to save up enough money so he can get into the investing. And he has one property that he's already moving into acquire and about to close next month. And he's interested to set up the Series LLC. And by the way, the investment is actually in Austin, Texas, and he's based in San Francisco. So Sean, good luck with that. And I think you're in the right place. And then we also had Lisa join us towards the end there. She's been here before, and she's based in Oklahoma. And she does have a multifamily and also a single family, but she'd like to expand her holdings and investment in multifamily. And her superpower is helping others.
Awesome.
And most of you already know who I am. Just very briefly, Alex Borromeo. I'm based in Seattle, Washington. I invest in stocks, in crypto, and businesses with a real estate component to it. My superpower is my ability to connect people and build trust, and that because I value that most. In terms of my challenge is really to find someone who can help me, mentor me, guide me, build this scalable business that I've had in my hand, but I haven't spent a great deal amount of time doing that, and I should. I realize that that's very important. And what's doing well is really the relationship and the connection that I've made over the few months in communities like this rural legal solution. So I value that most. And I also belong to another community that's focused on opportunity zone. And what I'm looking for is that particular individual who has been through and experienced in terms of building companies, going to market and scaling. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Well, Alex, thanks for sharing, and thanks for, being here as always. So Sean, want to say welcome as one of our new folks. And so what I heard you saying inside of there, Alex, is, Sean, yourself, Lisa, all you guys are in this building phase and looking for connections that can help you in how to build and scale. That was one of the common things I got out of that, which I think is a great one. For short-term investors, it's a different approach to scaling a business than if you have these long-term rentals. So definitely something I think this group will be really useful to kick around with each other. But thanks for sharing. All right, so I think that leaves Charlie and Lane that we're in a group. Do either of you guys want to share what came out of your group for us?
Yeah, I can try. Charlie and I just spent time getting to know each other on a more one-on-one basis, and admittedly, we didn't get too far along on the questions. On the location side, I'm here in the Austin, Texas area, and then he is actually out in Hawaii. So that was fun to learn. And then from a short-term rental perspective, it sounds like his market's gone through a lot of upheaval recently. I think back in 2020, they redid the STR laws, just kind of, that market risk that we all share as we're trying to scale. And he was just kind of at the very end telling me through how that affected where they were made to take on similar rules and liabilities that would be associated to a major resort chain and limited to certain geographical zones where those were allowed. So that was very insightful. From my side, I'm just getting started. I think I got an email yesterday. My series is basically done finally.
Nice.
So we're really close to getting kicked off, and I'm looking to scale. And right now I'm doing market analysis and trying to find out where I'm going to start on the short-term rental side. And so they're just identifying the opportunities and trying to get lift off.
That's awesome. Well, Lane, thanks for sharing. And yeah, I mean, once again, I'm kind of hearing that idea of I'm getting kicked off, ready to figure out what it looks like to scale. And then Charlie's had a bit of a pivot. I mean, the STR laws, I think, changed much quicker than any other area of real estate, at least in the past couple of years. I know Charlie's felt the impact of that in Hawaii. Austin has had a lot of changes as well. Lane, I know you probably missed out on a bunch of the changes, but you're coming into a new era of STR regulations there. And so, I definitely think it's something we keep an eye on. And this idea of scaling and growing, we have to adapt a little bit more in the short-term realm because of how these laws and regulations change so much. I think this is, I think short-term rentals is probably one of the more politics influenced type of investing realms when it comes into that. So, but Thank you guys for sharing. So, definitely things that are top of mind coming out of that for me is that inside of these shows, want to spend a lot of time focusing on how do you scale efficiently and grow this business and get it into the short-term rental market in a way that is, infinitely scalable. It also allows you to keep monitoring and pivoting when you need to be around these different regulations. So thanks everybody for sharing on that this morning. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go ahead and hop into the presentation. Give me just a minute to get the slides pulled up. We all know I'm not the most tech savvy, so it takes me a minute to do it. So let's get it going. All right, let's see here. All right, my friends, give me a thumbs up if you can see that for me. Fantastic. Thanks, Kim. So guys, what we are going to be tailoring today, what we're talking about is this idea of estate plans for short-term rental investors. So last week we talked about the series LLC. And so Sean, that may be a good one for you to check out. I know you're looking into the series, and then Lane, that may be a good one if you're wanting to refresh as you're just getting set up. But so inside of that, we want to make sure we've got the liability protection, but also the wealth generational aspect covered in this as well, which is where the estate plans comes in. So we'll walk through this file deck briefly. As I said earlier, any questions that come up for you, you want to keep them top of mind, make sure you're taking a note down or drop them in our chat and we'll get those on the back end. So a little bit about myself, for those of you who don't know, so my name is Megan Templeton. I am a consulting attorney here at Royal Legal, have been with Royal Legal Consulting for about 4 or so years. But inside of the small business, entrepreneur, real estate investor, attorney side of world for much longer, have experience inside of short-term, long-term syndications, multi-unit, note investing, have kind of had a portfolio that's really, has been pretty diverse, which is the way I typically like to keep it. And also just so what a little bit about Royal Legal here is, so we are a one-stop shop for you. We do offer everything from liability protection to wealth generation planning. Inside of that, we do operate in all 50 states. And so far, since our inception in about 2014, we have helped investors make sure they are covered for over 2 billion assets. So a lot of experience in the space. We've seen a lot of the fringe cases, know how to tailor these structures to you. So want to make sure we get the best resources in hand for you. So what is estate planning? So there's a couple of key things that go into estate planning. I think, when most people initially think, okay, I got to get my estate plan in place, the thing they think of is a will, which is a good first stop, but it's certainly not the only piece you need. Other items you're going to want is this idea of having a healthcare power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, a living will, your healthcare directive, your last will and testament. And so these are going to be the items you want to keep top of mind. And then all of that ultimately is going to work together with your revocable living trust to make sure that all of your assets are passed down in a way you want them to be. Top benefits of having this estate plan in place. One is going to be the idea of stable wealth growth over time. So as you accumulate these assets throughout your lifetime, you want to make sure they're consistently being included in an estate plan so that you can have the distribution you want upon your passing. It's also helping to create a legacy that matters. And I know this one's particularly important for me in conjunction with this idea of number 3, which is protecting your loved ones. So, personally, I want to make sure that these things I am working my whole life to build, people are benefiting from them, not only myself, but also my family and my kids. So inside of that, the estate plan is going to make sure that all the hard work you put in today is going to pay off tomorrow. It's also going to help protect your assets and wealth, and it's also going to create and maintain anonymity. Now, there's a couple ways we do that, but the tools we use inside of those pieces we talked about just a moment ago are going to help you with those items. So the next question, if I'm thinking through this, is, okay, I know what an estate plan is now, but how do I know if I need an estate plan? So I think you really have to take a step back and look at your business structures from a broader perspective. There's a couple of things when you're talking about building your business and including your estate plan of things you want. I think, that's going to be achieving financial freedom. It's going to be reclaiming your time, protecting your assets, and then most tailored to this estate plan concept is building your legacy. So we've got a couple of ways we can do this. We call it 5 pillars of asset protection. And that's going to be things we're going to put in place with things like the series LLC, DST, traditional LLC. You're also going to have this idea of tax strategies where you're going to work with your CPA as well as your financial planners to do that. But all of that's really leading up to this wealth creation idea. So how do we build it? How do we maintain it? And how do we make sure our loved ones benefit from it? So when you need to get an estate plan, so we've got it kind of broken out into two different thought processes here. If you are someone who doesn't mind letting the government take your money when you pass away, then you're not going to need an estate plan. What happens if you pass away without an estate plan is the government's going to take a large chunk of what you've worked your life to build. Next thing is if you don't have any assets, you don't have anything to protect, then you may not need an estate plan at this point. Or if you've got a value of a net worth of less than $50,000, it may not be worth it because the way the probate works, you can send it through probate pretty easily at that point. Or if you don't have a business. So, with business comes complexity in regards to the assets that you own, the partners that you may have involved in your life for these purposes. And so if you don't have any type of business, you may not need an estate plan yet. My assumption is those that are coming here with us today or that are listening to this presentation later on, you are already in the business mindset or you are in the looking to build a net worth that is worth you're going to need that estate plan for. So if you're wanting to pass your wealth on, if you're wanting to make sure you control the majority of your money, it doesn't go back to the government. If you want to protect your family from the time and expense of probate court, which can take up to a year, and as a grieving loved one, that's a long time to be dealing with this. If you've got over that $50,000 in assets or own a business, then we highly recommend getting the estate plan in place. Estate plan is going to give you lasting protection. So it's going to make sure that your legacy is provided for your family. It's going to keep your wealth safe. It's also going to plan for any misfortune. So it lets you decide who's going to make your health care and your financial decisions if something happens to you. So if you become injured or temporarily incapacitated, it's going to have those documents in place. So your folks around you know what kind of actions you want taken on behalf of you. How to build a legacy that lasts. So the first thing inside of this is you really want to get clarity on your goals. And so the first step in that, I believe, is creating a written plan. Once you put pen to paper, that's when you can really decide what's important to you and how do you want to move forward with it. Also gives you that log. So if anyone ever needs to come back and see your thought processes or anything, you've got that written plan down there as well. You want to use specialized tools so that can leverage your time and your money. That's going to give you both freedom back in your time and money. So we want to get those tools into your hands so we can give you those benefits of it. Next thing is you're going to want to find a mentor or a guide who can help you avoid those mistakes. And so, that team can look like a lot of different folks. It could be a financial planner, a CPA. It could be, a good friend who is further along in their business endeavors than you are. It could be someone here at RLS. But essentially, you want to put someone on your team who has already thought through these things. So how do I preserve this wealth? How do I grow it? So I think it's pivotal that you have someone in your life who can walk you through it. So how does estate planning work? You'll see here we got a diagram and it's got a couple of different things going into the circle. You've got your home, investments, we've got cottage listed, business, other assets, things like that. And then you've got you in the middle of that. So what we're looking for is a properly prepared estate plan is going to help you minimize taxes and probate costs. For your family, it's going to help make sure that they are acting according to your wishes regarding the final distribution of your assets. So the estate plan is going to make sure that all of these items around the edge of the circle go from you to your beneficiaries and the way you want them to. It's the best way to ensure that your desires are carried out. What are the different components of an estate plan? Well, we've got a couple and they all kind of boil down on this one to the idea of having, you got a power of attorney. Well, what does that power of attorney look like? What can it control? It can go into things like pre-planned funerals, planned giving, financial records, taxes, life insurance, joint property, gifts to family. So it's a lot of ideas that go into this idea of estate planning. It's more than just, hey, I need a will. It really is a comprehensive overview of what items are going to impact not only my end of life status, what's going to impact the future for those of my loved ones, my family, my friends when something happens. So once again, we're going to walk through just kind of briefly, what does this estate plan consist of? So if you'll start up here at the top, you'll see that we've got the durable power of attorney. What that is it's typically a 1 to 2 page document. And it's going to name individuals who can make your financial decisions for you in the event of incapacity or disability. So these can be drafted a couple different ways, but typically what they're going to look like is it's going to have a list of items that people can take on your behalf, such as they can withdraw funds from your bank account. They can make investments on your behalf. They can take any of those financial actions that need to keep running when you're not able to, but you're not able there to tell them how to run it. That durable power of attorney steps in. So relatedly, you've got the medical power of attorney. So it's going to be the same concept, but instead of for financial decisions, it's medical decisions. So this is going to cover things like if you're incapacitated, you want your loved ones to know, do you want to be resuscitated? Do you want to go on any type of life support systems? Do you want to have any, if you have to have a tube feeding or anything like that? The medical power of attorney is where you can lay out, here are the things that I want to be, and I want to be taken care of with, or here are the things I do not want. So flowing down from that, you've got this idea of the Hipaa authorization. So what that document does is it permits you to name individuals to have access to your medical information and records. So this is a document that you would give to your hospital staff, any medical providers you're dealing with, so they know who they can talk to about your particular case. Related to that, we've got the idea of the living will. So the living will is something that declares your wishes with respect to life prolonging treatments and procedures. Once again, looping into the idea of making sure that people know what type of medical care you want to receive and the kind of care you do not want to receive. And then down at the bottom, we've got two more items. We've got the pour over will and living trust. Now that technically could be two separated out, but they work in conjunction with each other. So you'll hear them jump together a good bit. What those items do is it states how you want your property to pass and who's going to take care of your minor children upon your death. So, pour over will, living trust are going to be the things that are top of mind for folks when they start thinking about estate planning, and they're definitely extremely important, but they're not the all and be all. Related to that idea of who's going to take care of your minor children, we've got the Declaration of Guardian. So that's going to be the documents that names the individual who is going to be the guardian of your person in the event of the state or incapacity, or if you've got minor children, you'll have one for them as well. This next idea is going to be the idea of estate planning. So what exactly does it look like a pour over will versus a living trust? So the pour over will, the idea of this document is it's going to capture anything you forgot to put into the trust. It's kind of the CYA document. Because ultimately your living trust is going to be the most comprehensive document you have in your estate plan. It's what's going to contain all of your assets and all of the directions for those assets. But you want to make sure you've got peace of mind in the event that you have left something out of that living trust. That's where the pour over will is going to come into place. Pour over will is going to say that anything that I have not specifically listed into my trust, but it is my property at the time of my death, it's going to pour over into the living trust. So you're still going to avoid probate, and you've got that catch-all provision to make sure everything's going to be included in that trust to avoid probate. Benefits of the living trust: it keeps your assets anonymous. It does avoid probate court, which, like I said, can last up to a year and cost a lot of money to go through. It details who the ultimate owner of everything, chooses who gets the money and when instead of it going back to the government, and it's going to control the process during your life and after. So these living trusts is a revocable trust that is set up while you are living that has implications now, but also upon your passing. Hospital protections inside of the estate planning. So these are the three we talked about a moment ago. You've got the Hipaa authorization, healthcare power of attorney versus the durable power of attorney. And we walked through briefly what those three things are. But so once again, just to recap, Hipaa is going to be the idea of who can your medical staff share your medical information with. Healthcare power of attorney is going to detail what healthcare decisions, how you want them made, and who can make them. Durable power of attorney is related to your financial decisions. It's going to be who can make those financial decisions, and do you have instructions on how to do that? So estate planning decoded. Without an estate plan, the court's by default going to appoint your biological family instead of someone you wanted to oversee your estate plan. So you lose that ability to pick and choose who's involved in this process. If you have to go through the probate process, like I said, it can take up to a year, it can cost thousands of dollars. It's a hard time, a lot of grief. And at the end of the day, most of the time, I would think, families don't like the way the probate process goes. So it's much easier to dictate that on the front end so you have say in this process. So it's all about discovering the right tools, right? I mean, that's what estate planning is. It is having all of the tools you need to give you a comprehensive guide to how things are going to go upon your passing, so your family can pick that document or those documents up and run with it. So your estate's going to be all about money and property owned by a particular person, and your estate tax is the financial tax that can occur when you transfer property at the time of the transferor's death. So, as investors, that's something we're constantly looking at is what are my tax implications, particularly what are my tax implications when I pass away? Is there a step-up basis I need to be worried about, anything like that? So will and power of attorney decoded. So you've got the will, which is a legal document, which is how things are going to be distributed. A living will, which is going to be that idea of someone to manage your healthcare decisions. And then the power of attorney, which is the document that controls decisions regarding healthcare management to a designated agent. So what happens beyond the estate plan? So that's where you want to add in your asset protection as well. So just as asset protection is not a standalone comprehensive business strategy, neither is estate planning. You want to have them in conjunction with each other. So the asset protection, like we said, could look like using a series LLC, a DST, various types of trusts. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but you want to make sure that you're not solely relying on your estate plan to protect your assets. Having the asset protection plan is going to help you avoid probate court, protect your heirs, control ownership, but it's also going to give you liability protection today and now. What does the full estate planning map look like? A fully comprehensive plan, you are going to have things like offshore trusts, living trusts, traditional LLCs, investment vehicles like the solo 401k or the self-directed IRA. And then there's this idea of whatever your asset holding company is going to look like. Some frequently asked questions we get a lot here at RLS about this. So once you get your living trust, you will see an exhibit at the back. And so what is that supposed to be used for? Do you fill it in? Does our staff fill it in, or an attorney you're working with? Exhibits are going to be used to list the assets you want to include in living your trust. And so they can be completed by yourself and your partner. And that's where you really can detail out what you own and how you want it to go. And then there's the idea of, okay, well, maybe I've got the living trust. Is that comprehensive? Is it not? As we've been talking about, you're really going to have a multi-step, multi-document process to this. You're going to need your pour-over will, living trust, healthcare directive, Hipaa release, and those 2 power of attorneys we talked about. Next thing is, how many copies of the estate plan should I have, and where should I put those? And so I think a good rule of thumb is you want to have at least 3 copies around. I typically tell people 1, you can keep it in a safety deposit box, fireproof box, somewhere that your loved ones can know they could go and retrieve those documents. 2 would be a copy on file with your attorney or whoever drafted that. And then 3, I would give a copy directly to whoever the representative for your estate is going to be. And so that way you've got multiple copies around. There's no confusion about where documents are, what's going to be controlled by what, that type of thing. Everyone's on the same page. Can you make specific wording in your living trust to talk about what the asset and who's it's going to? And you absolutely can. So that's the benefit of the living trust, is it is infinitely amendable. We can talk about how we draft it to make sure it covers your wishes exactly. So when you're meeting with an advisor, whether it be our team or another attorney, just make sure that you are clearly laying out what you want, because most likely the attorney can draft it as such. There's not a lot of things that are off the plate for us. Last one is, what happens if you sell an asset or a short-term rental? So that's going to be automatically removed from your estate plan due to how we structure our documents. So particularly here at RLS, the way we do things is it's set up as a pass-through up to your estate plan. So if you take it out of your structure, it's going to come out of your estate plan at the same time. Here at the end, we've got our Royal Legal quiz. And so what that's useful for is if you are someone who is new to our network and you want to figure out more about this estate plan or more about how to use the Series LLC as a short-term investor, that kind of thing, we've got a lot of resources for you and a lot of good folks in our team we want to connect you with and make sure you're getting tailored advice. The Royal Legal quiz is the best way to do that. So I highly encourage you guys to take that quiz. It'll give you a little bit more insight, and then make sure you've got the plan tailored just to you. And that is it for the presentation, my friends. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right, guys. So I just threw a whole lot of information at you. So let's go ahead and hop straight in the Q&A. So we've got more time for that today. So does anybody have any questions that are top of mind for them right now?
Megan?
Hey, Charlie.
Hi, how you doing? Sorry, I should have raised my hand there.
No, you're okay.
I got a quick question because this comes up all the time. And I know it's just regarding your personal primary property versus your investment properties.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, in setting up this structure, right, for the estate plan, usually, correct me if I'm wrong, but you got to separate out your primary property from your business asset side, so it's not combined, correct?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's a couple ways you can treat primary residences. A lot of people will try to move under a business structure, so you get the liability protections on it. Fortunately, when you do that, you trigger some tax consequences. And so what we tell folks about primary residence is it really needs to be a joint conversation between you, your attorney, and your CPA, because we can protect it legally, but the tax implications on that are going to be the highest in priority on this one. If your CPA gives the go-ahead, we can move it under the structure, but that only happens probably in about 5% of the cases. What's more likely is they're going to want you to keep that primary residence outside of any liability protection structure. And inside of that, it can go into your estate plan. So having something just included in your estate plan is not going to trigger a loss of those tax benefits. But if it goes into an LLC, it most likely will. So, it's kind of a joint conversation, but that's the foundation of it. Is most likely we're going to leave it in just the estate plan, not a structure, but there's possibility we could. So we really need to talk to your CPA about it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And typically you can put it in a trust, right? You can have a personal trust, but not necessarily under the business trust.
That's exactly right. So what the IRS and the various entities looking at this when they go for like homestead exemptions, particularly the counties and things, they're going to want to see the trust. Now, if it's a typical living trust, it's going to be a green flag, no problem. Most of the time, a lot of the revocable trusts may even be acceptable, but it really depends on who the beneficiary of that trust is. So if you've got a trust that flows through to an LLC, you're probably still going to have a red flag on it. So yeah. You can definitely use trust to some extent, but it depends on the type of trust and how it's worded.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lane, I believe that was your question as well. Lane, anything else on that one?
No, I had a similar question about putting it into a trust, that I called the county here where I live locally, and they indicated a trust was no problem. The part I didn't quite get the distinction on is if you put it in the trust, but then have it setting in a land trust specifically. I didn't quite get to that distinction level. And is that something that you would recommend looking into?
I would, yeah. And, that's something our team can help you with if you need it as well, because most likely if you just call the general county line, you're going to get a county clerk who's working at the front desk and they hear trust. They immediately think living trust is what we're talking about for estate planning, which, like I said, that's almost always going to be a green flag. They're not thinking of it from an asset protection trust, like a land trust, like you're talking about. Most likely the land trust you're going to run into issues with.
Okay.
But like, on those, what I would say is also let's loop your CPA in though, because it may be something where, if you've got full equity in the home, you don't need those tax benefits. If you can offset it in other ways, we may still want to talk about using a land trust for it, because the county is probably not going to give you pushback on the land trust portion, but your CPA may have a heart attack if he finds out you moved it without talking to him first.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's see. We've got Jeremy, Lisa, Sean, Alex. You guys have any other questions or anything?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the big chart, Megan, the one that lists number 1 estate plan and all the way down to number 11.
Yeah.
The IRA. And seemingly, if you were just starting off like Sean or somebody it's a little bit on the other end of it, like Charlie, if I were to look at this chart, you could follow this like the way you have numbered it here, right? Like you start off with the estate plan and then you go down the list. And then the series LLC comes in somewhere around item 7. But you can also do this a la carte, right? You can do your series LLC and do your estate plan. So I guess that's sort of an overall what's the most efficient way if you're going to use the Royal Legal Solutions anyway for all of it. What would be the best way to approach it economically wise, in terms of cost?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for flagging that. So there's a couple different ways you can think about it. So, I've got the list pulled up in front of me, and you'll see we've got some things on here that may not even be applicable to everyone, particularly, like number 2, we've got listed as the offshore trust.
Correct.
Well, that's going to be something you really don't need until you've got a pretty high net worth built up in your business. We're talking 20 million plus. And so, some of these would be kind of an a la carte method where you may not need them. I think like the solo 401k is a good one, but you may not need it immediately. So if you're looking for the order of how to set these things up on, I think there's some that are done in conjunction and some that are going to come later on. So my thought process on this would be, as I'm starting this new business, I'm getting these new assets. I want to know how to protect what I'm getting right now. That's going to be imperative for me, is how do I protect it today, particularly when it comes to real estate, because you're immediately going to have liability and potentially litigation circumstances, because you're going to have tenants immediately, or at least hopefully you are, right? So you can get the return on the investment. So if I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about, okay, well, I need to get an LLC in place first thing. Now, what that LLC looks like, that may vary based on what you want your business to look like and how quickly you're going to scale. And so I'm thinking, okay, I've got the LLC. I know I'm going to be protected today, regardless of what type of LLC that may be. But I also want to make sure that if I were to, if I were to unfortunately be in a car wreck tomorrow, well, how do I make sure that the assets I've built today, I'm not protected for tomorrow? Well, that's where the estate plan comes in. So I typically think of doing the asset protection in conjunction with the estate plan. I think those are good things to do together. And there's a couple of reasons goes into that. One is you've got the protections all set up in the beginning, but two, it's also more economical, like you were talking about, Alex. So if we can set up the estate plan at the same time as the LLC, we can make sure those are properly connected together. And so that's going to save you any additional costs later down the road of having to update things. So for example, if we set up the series today, but then you waited 2 years to set up the estate plan, we're going to have to go back and amend some of these series documents to make sure the estate plan properly flows to it. So I would do the estate plan, I would do the LLC or your entity structuring at the same time if possible. And then outside of that, once I've got those up and going, that's when I'm going to start thinking about how do I plug in things like my retirement vehicles, like my solo 401k, my self-directed IRA. And then once I've been doing it a little bit, okay, well, do I need an offshore trust at this point? So you're right, it does build upon each other, but I think the foundation piece for me would be the entity structuring in conjunction with the estate planning.
So it's a chef's choice, right? In terms of what you recommend.
It is, yeah, it's chef's
We
choice.
can do it that way, and when it would cover it for the most part, and so you get a nice package for that in terms of cost, because both of this or all of these, particularly the series LLC or the estate planning, it's a dynamic document that continue to change.
Yeah,
and
that's
so at some point you got to get it plugged in. Is it best to start like that at the beginning, so you have the whole plan, and then just budget that out in terms of what you're doing, since it's going to cover anyway of all of your business activities, right? Whether you're starting or you're better, or whether or not you're already matured in terms of what you've done all these years, because you've got all these assets and businesses.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I think as much as you can start with, do it. If you've got the financial bandwidth, the time commitment bandwidth to be able to set these things up, I would say get it right from the jump. But if you have got financial constraints, or if you got bandwidth as far as time constraints goes, and you really need to narrow down, I would say that if you had to pick an order, let's get the entity structure first, and then let's get the estate plan next. But if you can do them at the same time, you're going to end up saving a little bit of pocket change. So I definitely think it's something to try to do if you can. But always want to be sensitive to where people are at with their financials and their business planning as well.
And moreover too, Megan, right? Once you have this thing set up, it's not just a document that is inside your safe or filed away and collect dust. There's actually a relationship that goes beyond that, right? Dynamic, which is like what we're doing here.
Yeah.
In addition to being able to have access to whoever is your attorney or your CPA.
Yeah, that's exactly
that as needed basis, correct? As part of the package.
Yeah, it is. And so, here at Royal Legal, the way we kind of accomplish that is we set up what we call biannual reviews, or these peace of mind check-ins. And so we do them on a regular rotating schedule where you'll meet with one of our advisors, and our advisors will walk through your entire business structure with you. And so what that looks like is we're going to be asking questions to identify, have you added any new assets we need to include? Have you sold anything we need to remove officially? Have you had any life-changing events that we could impact your estate plan? So that would be things like if you've had a death of a beneficiary, if you've had a divorce, if you've had a new child or a new marriage. So we're looking for those life-changing events that are going to cause a trigger to need to update this set of documents. So it is a breathing, growing process. We do recommend you work with an advisor pretty closely on it. Like you said, just kind of regular check-ins. So if that's not something you're doing with our team, you've set up with someone else, I would recommend just having an advisor in your corner who you can do those type of check-ins with, that they're going to have these questions top of mind to know to trigger that for you, where you're thinking about, okay, maybe I didn't realize that, one of my beneficiaries just turned the age of majority. What does that look like now? Is that different? So you want to have someone on your team who's thinking through that for you, so you don't have to.
Right, but if it is something, if we buy the whole package,
Yeah.
including all the professional support, when we have these sessions, is that on the clock? You have to pay for that, or that's part of the package that as needed, or there's a yearly review, and basically you paid for that? How does that work?
Yeah, so it varies. We've got different packages and how we approach that. But typically there is at a base level, there will always be some type of check-in and review. What'll vary is based on how much of a check-in or review process there is, how frequently you're meeting, that kind of thing. But with the stuff that we set up, we always want to make sure we're keeping some sort of eye on it. So there will be a check-in process involved somewhere.
And one last thing, I'm sorry, guys, to ask all these questions, that you could be in the middle of a transaction like Sean, right? Or let's say Lisa, who's about to be doing something more, that they can call on somebody at Roy Legal Solutions to bounce off an idea, and they're not necessarily charged for that time, or are they going to be charged for that time?
Yeah, if it's something that's related to your structure and things we've set up, depending on the tier of package you're involved with Royal Legal, that most likely will not be billed. There are some things that will be billed at our hourly rate, but I would say majority of our clients are asking questions that are going to be covered inside of their plan.
And of course, you have this community, right, to bounce off all of these different things, the breakout, somebody experienced like Charlie, and some other folks, and you can touch on that. You can get your information that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, one of the things we just started is the Discord channels. And so inside of, I think they've been going about a week, but I've already seen a lot of interaction between community members, encouraging and talking about different strategies they use. So, like if you are in the middle of a deal and you've got some questions and it's not something that our attorneys can answer for you, or not in the time frame you need, I think that community is also a good second layer resource for you.
Very good. Thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. All right. Any other questions I can answer for you guys? Okay. Well,
Megan, I got a quick question. Regarding the Discord channels, maybe I missed it on there, but do you folks have, is there some kind of tutorial so we can make sure when we're in that Discord channel that, because we got a lot of stuff going on in there.
It's kind of, it can be, yeah, it's a lot. And I don't know about you, Charlie, I'm new to Discord. And so I'm trying to figure out the platform as well as the interaction.
Right. Yeah.
And so I know there's a couple of pinned messages, I believe, in every, I think they call them a server, but this is how not tech savvy I can be sometimes. But there's pinned messages at the top of each thread that will help you through it. And then I'll flag that for our marketing team as well. We'll try to get some overview walkthroughs of how to use it as well.
Yeah, even if there's like a little tutorial thing or something that team can do so that anybody who's first coming into the Discord can go through it. So you can get a quick overview, because there's a lot of good input that is coming through it. But
yeah.
How do you respond to it, or as far as being able to ask questions or input or all that, right?
Yeah.
Protocol, right, so to speak.
Yeah. Absolutely. No. And it looks like Ken just dropped an article for you, kind of a broad overview of how to use Discord. And I think we've got some more RLS tailored information about how to use Discord in conjunction with RLS too.
Awesome.
Yeah. Like I said, highly recommend everybody sign up for it. I'm having a lot of fun. I know I'm going to check it a couple times a day and just like to see what folks are chatting about. So I'm accessible through there as well. So, happy to chat with whoever you need. And let me scroll through the chat real quick and see. So Lane, thank you for the feedback. And you're right. I think that would be a good idea for a future session, is this idea of best practice terms, safety nets. So maybe we'll have like a contracting platform partnership type of thing. That's a good one. So I'm going to flag that for us. I think that's all of the public questions we've got. Any last minute group questions before we kind of do the sign off info?
And one more thing I'd like to add what Lane said, right? It would be interesting to see an actual use case, right? When you have the Series LLC structure that's actually making the acquisition, or when you're getting this set up, right? Because that's something that's going to happen. And that's top of mind for a lot of people who are just getting into it. People who's done it, Obviously, it's got a pretty good idea on how to do it. But for the most part, I think it's something that might be pertinent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great one. And maybe, you know, I use these structures. I'm comfortable sharing my stuff. So maybe we'll walk through a couple of case studies over the next couple of weeks. So I think it's a great way to do it as well. Yeah, well, thank you guys for flagging that. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap today then. I know I've got a couple of messages here in the chat that I'll respond to in just a moment, but things to flag, you know, the Discord channels we were just talking about. We've always got these recordings available. Make sure you're signing up for all these shows. I've gotten the question a lot of, Megan, you guys have 7 shows. Which ones do I need to be coming to? So I just want to provide some clarity on that. You know, we've got these investor specific persona shows, which are every day of the week. So like tomorrow is long-term investors. Now, each week we're covering one topic. So if you came today in the short term, we're going to be talking about estate planning again tomorrow in long term. Now, it will be a little bit more tailored to that specific investor profile, but if you're attending one, you're probably going to have a good idea for the other. I don't want to discourage anybody from coming to multiple, but just want to let you know that some of the information may be covered again, but there might be other questions in the Q&A that could be really useful. So feel free to check those out. And then we've got Royal Life, which is right after this one today. It's kind of more of a how to live an excellent inside of your business and professional life. I think it's a really useful tool our COO is doing with Scott right now that I'm really enjoying. Tuesdays, we have Royal Tax, which we cover a bunch of different tax topics. The Q&A there is particularly valuable as well because you can bring any tax questions you have. And then we have our Royal Investing as well on Wednesdays, which I lead, which is we refer to as kind of like our real estate 101. That's where we're going to be covering the broad topics, have a lot of guest speakers. And so highly recommend you guys check out all or any of those that are pertinent to you. Just want to clarify what the different days are for. But as always, any questions that pop up, feel free to reach out. Happy to help. And then just happy to have you guys on these calls. So I'm going to respond to a couple of these questions in here before I hop out. We'll leave the room open for a few minutes if you guys want to chat, and then we'll close out. And I hope to see you guys in the Royal Life room. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Megan.